Anesthesiologists, what are the best things people have said under the gas? My wife couldn't take me for my first colonoscopy due to work, so my mother did, and apparently coming out of anesthesia, when they were removing my four, I told the nurse, "Oh, that's neat. I've taken a lot of those out, but I've never had it done to me, and my patients are always dead." Apparently she looked very concerned by this information, and my mother had to explain that I've been a licensed funeral director for many years and hospitals and other facilities often do not remove tubing. Apparently I then followed that up by telling the young nurse she had a nice butt, but not as nice as my wife's. My mother felt free to share that with everyone. So yeah. I creeped out a nurse by talking about my occupation, and then even more by commenting on her butt in a backhanded compliment. Two of my both patients coming out of anesthesia. Am I in hell? I responded, no you're not, you're just in recovery. That sounds like something the devil would say. Count backwards from 100 to prove it. Or the one who stroked my unshaved arm while I was trying to keep him from pulling at his fore, and muttered you'd make such a great carpet. During my wisdom teeth surgery they were playing music, and Billie Jean comes on. I said glad Michael Jackson could join us, and that was the last thing I remember. I had a patient start a joke before surgery and finish it when they woke up without promoting. My husband went under last year, and once he woke up, by appearances he was as sober as a church mouse. Walking, asking serious questions of the doctor, apparently no issues are all. He remembered the procedure and described it to me in detail. I figured he just never went completely under. He was craving Chinese food, and nothing would do except for buffet, so we headed down and loaded up our first load of plates. Evidently, he actually woke up from the anesthesia at the buffet. As far as he remembers, he was put under and woke up in front of a plate of chicken teriyaki on a stick. Not anesthesia, but patient was heavily sedated in ICU. Nurse gave an enema, half-conscious response, honey you know I don't like it that way. In high school I had a reconstructive surgery on my knee as I tore my ACL and meniscus in a sports injury. After the surgery I woke up in post-op, which was a fairly large room with probably 6 to 7 other patients in beds waiting to become conscious again. I was lying there all groggy and confused when two nurses walked over pushing one of those carts with a computer on it. They stood over me and were typing into the computer when one nurse said to the other in a sort of frantic whisper, we've got to plug this thing in or this one is going to die. Naturally, semi-conscious me thought that the thing was me, and I started to incoherently yell for the nurses to unplug whatever they needed to in order to find an outlet to keep me alive. Turns out it was the battery on the laptop that was going to die. Apparently the death rate for an ACL repair is pretty low. Last year they were knocking me out for a colonoscopy. It was the third time I had been put under in a year. As such I had a curiosity. I had heard that when they knock you out you are still awake for a while, you just don't remember. So in the spirit of science I proposed a test with the anesthesiologist. When she started the medicine I would begin counting backward. When I would wake up we would compare what I remembered to what she observed. Plunger down, 99, 98, 97, I remembered nothing more. Minutes later I awoke. The anesthesiologist espied me and came over quickly. What did you remember? She asked. 97. She began laughing. You got down to 7. When I got put under for a colonoscopy I didn't really fall asleep during the countdown. I just looked at the nurse a bit confused and said I don't notice anything. And she smiled and squeezed my wrist and said just give it a moment. As soon as she said that I started fading out, and according to her the last thing I mumbled was oh that's you magic witch. I had my wisdom teeth out and supposedly still bleeding a good amount on the way to CVS to pick up the meds. My mom was driving and I was just staring out the window collecting blood in my mouth. Eventually it reached a point it was too much at a red light. rolled down the window and just let it all flow out of my mouth. I look up and this lady is looking at me with just pure horror on her face. I proceeded while still in some sort of haze from the drugs to give her what I can imagine the bloodiest smile anyone has ever seen. She wasn't originally turning right but proceeded to make an immediate turn. I am so glad I can remember this while still being high. I was given a relaxer prior to colonoscopy and was rolled into the room. Doctor asked me what I had done that weekend. I said I went to the MN State Fair. Oh, she says eat anything interesting. I said why don't you tell me? No laughter whatever in the room. And then I was out. I swear she gave an extra shove because I half woke up during the procedure and remember groaning. My fiancé and I had broken up within the last week and was still dealing with that horribly. I was on pain meds for my shoulder and was scheduled for surgery in the current week. The day of the surgery, I was to get a nerve block. The anesthesiologist was the one performing the nerve block. He and I were chit-chatting, and he was just a really comforting person. He was telling me about everything that was going to go on during the surgery. Then we were just chit-chatting about life when the topic of the breakup came up. He was even comforting with that. So after that, I was wheeled into surgery. He was there to put me under, which for some reason put me at great ease. As I was going under, I guess I started talking through the mask and he lifted the mask to hear what I was trying to say. When I boldly stated I still love you fiancé's name while holding direct eye contact with him. I didn't know I did it. Not until he visited me in recovery. He said thanks for the nickname. Then told me what I said. I guess the entire surgical staff referred to him by my fiancé's name for the duration of the surgery. So not only did I call this poor guy a woman's name that stuck with him for the duration for the surgery, I stated how much I loved him to boot. When I went back for the second surgery, guess who my anesthesiologist was? Regardless of my foul-ups, he is an awesome anesthesiologist and really good at his job. Not an anesthesiologist, but when I severely dislocated and broke my knee I apparently gave one of the doctors that was just finishing resetting my leg a huge slap on the back and yelled it's fixed. You guys are the best doctors I've ever seen. Giving a 5-star review. Wife said the nurses were cracking up. I'm a pretty big guy and the doctor I gave the friendly pat on the back was a relatively small dude. I am an anesthetist, so I hear pretty funny things daily, but one sticks out. After a routine surgery we are wheeling the patient out of the room and the stretcher gets caught on a wire, a common occurrence. Well, I look under and ask the nurse what are we on? And the patient replies super loudly, I dunno but it's F''I.N.G. Awesome. Made me chuckle. I went under for a nasal canal surgery and apparently after the surgery I was holding the nurse's hand and repeating I love you. Don't leave me over and over. My brother went under and on his way out he said holy F. You are beautiful and I'm in love to the nurse anesthetist. I broke my hand tumbling once and had to get surgery. He goes to put the mask on my face and says this is oxygen. I cough as the mask goes on. He pulls the mask away and I said I trusted you. You lying F. That's the last thing I remember. Nurse anesthetist here. When I was in school I was getting ready to get a lady off to sleep and going through my regular spiel. I had the mask on her face and I said nice big breaths as I pushed propofol. Right before she went out she said thanks, I just had them done. I looked at my preceptor, we looked at the circulator, and we all burst out laughing. I now say slow deep breaths instead. I love telling that story, that lady made all our days. Patient. When I was coming up from shoulder surgery on a pretty substantial dose of fentanyl, my wife told me that I looked at the head nurse and said, your boobs are spectacular, I want to see them. I have no memory of it, but apparently the wife was mortified, and the nurse thought it was hysterical. She also said it wasn't particularly unusual to get comments of that sort. not an anesthesiologist, but when my stepdad was going under for a surgery, he was almost out, but at a sweet point that the doctor told my mom she could ask him anything and he wouldn't be able to help but answer truthfully. She asked, "Do you love me?" My stepdad replied, "You need to go on and get your little Yoda shoes. I'm pretty sure Yoda doesn't even wear shoes." Like and subscribe for more content. And remember to check out Reddit.